Greetings and welcome to a outdoorsy, fiery tavern talk. My name's Artenon, I think. This guy over
His
here.
name is Artenon, and I'm Ronan.
And I'm Keldor.
And we're out imagining dragons, watching the stars. And it's
Enjoying
tavern talk, so we're enjoying some beverages around the fire. Kind of a disheartening tavern talk. Yeah.
slightly. Or a lotly, depending on how you look at it.
There's a paradigm shift amongst us. Within the LarpCraft community, we have built rule sets for the last 5 years based on what we see in other games, what we see in other role-playing games, and
That work and don't work.
we've done both.
I know.
We've definitely done both.
But we tried to weed out the things that didn't work.
And for the most part, it worked. I mean,
Still working.
yeah, it's working. What we're finding as more and more players join LarpCraft and more colonies get going, people's phones need to ring during a tavern talk. So one should answer said phone. So, before we were interrupted a little bit there. Yeah. So we make rule sets and such that sound fun, are interesting, and we throw out some drafts, we get feedback, things get modified, play them in games over season after season, things get modified.
We revise them.
Yeah, so everything kind of just happens at games, which is where it's supposed to happen. We're not just,
It's called playability testing.
for the most part, and then your community kind of tells you where it needs to go. And lately, we've been putting a lot of stuff together with the LarpCraft community and putting all these great and wonderful tools to improve the game and playability of stuff for the players and training and all that stuff. But as you start to get to a certain figure of people, the playable things in the game start to become kind of a problem. So, and by problem, it's not really a problem. It's more of it slows the game down, it drags it down, it slows down the immersion or breaks the immersion. And I guess from where we're kind of at a tilting point of where should things go? Because you play a game and you invest in that game emotionally. You take the time to learn the skills, or try to. And then there's things that need to change. And anytime you change from a core mechanic, you start to lose a luster if you don't do it right.
If you don't change from a core mechanic, but instead change a core mechanic and just change it, you also lose something there too.
So we've been talking with the elders and chiefs and trying to come up with ways to make the game more fun, make the mechanics simpler, so that when you're playing it, whether you're playing with 30 players or 300 players or 3,000 players, the mechanics generally are playable in all those scenarios. Right now, the way we have a lot of this stuff written at the time of this recording, which is August 13th or 15th or whatever, 2015, the skills are more based for the smaller game, or it's higher fantasy. Would it be more like higher fantasy?
Personally, well, the way I see it is they are geared, yes, for smaller games. Because if you have, like you said, 300 or 3,000 people all throwing, some of them are throwing spells, it's going to get very confusing very quickly.
I don't know if we should say games. I think we should say encounters. Because, like, the small battles, once you get over, like, 5, 10 people, it becomes very
Chaotic?
chaotic,
Yeah.
Especially if people start going away from the simple just attacking the armor. And then when you add magic on the top of that, it gets confusing for a lot of people, and then not everybody knows what everything is.
And
So-
therein lies
That's probably the biggest problem.
therein lies the issue I believe that we're having.
There's not enough people that are trained in how to do all this stuff, and they don't have the role play experience to just roll with it or wing it. They get caught up on the, well, technically, or but, and who won, and basically by the time you start doing that, you just wreck the role play that you're trying to create.
Right, it no longer becomes a role play game, it becomes a
Statistics and
Yeah,
rules. And,
yeah. I'm the winner, you're the loser kind of thing. Instead of for the enjoyment of everyone, it becomes I have to be the winner.
Right. So what we're kind of discussing now, and I don't know if it's so much of a discussion as somebody posts something of dramatic change, and the whole scroll in the Elder Scrolls just kind of landslides to a negative almost immediately. And that is, I would kind of call that a protection clause, because there's so many people already invested in what you have. If you change a game, whether it's LarpCraft or anything, if you change something too drastically, you rock the boat or you sink the ship, essentially. So there's a more simplistic way to do some of the stuff that we've been talking about, and taking some of and again, these are just all ideas at this point, but to take some of the offensive abilities, because there's a lot of them, and making them more of a defense or role play skill profession thing, like a lot of the professions are, because the professions work really good.
I'll give you that.
They're really role play intense. They are there they serve a purpose. They're not just supporting the fighters, but they're doing a lot of other things. And those professions, even, from cooking to psychic to, well, psychic's not a good example, but, from support to changing the whole game because of how these professions are run without fighting. It's very unique in how they're able to be done. So out of all the things in Myths and Legends, out of all the things that we've done, I believe that the professions are probably the thing we've done best. That's really not, with the exception of Psychic, super screwed up.
Psychic isn't really that bad either.
Yeah.
I will admit, it is maybe the most broken out of all of them, but it's not that bad.
True, and it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. But,
well, when we started the LarpCraft and came up with the abilities, they were to enhance, like you said, the role play. Yes, we gave people abilities to, you can one-hit kill something. You can survive a one-hit kill. We tried to give everything a check and a balance.
And as we kept going year after year, we've kind of started layering some things, which gave some of the rule books some inconsistencies of, all right, this says it's unblockable. Well, that means you can block it with spell block, which blocks an unblockable. So, it doesn't really make sense to a new player. Those who've been playing it for a while get it because they literally grew up into it. Ufnar is joining us now, so he'll come on in a second. But some of the things that we have in there, again, the idea was to allow a 30-person game and a 300-person game to run almost as smoothly. Obviously, when you have more numbers, it's going to be more chaotic because it's just the power of numbers. But when you start getting past 10, 20 people in a scrimmage of some sort, and there's stuff flying all over the place, and there's all these calls, it's hard to hear the calls when you're under a helm and things are moving and action's going. And two, chances are you're playing with somebody who's new. There's always somebody new in a game, always. So they're not going to know what's happening. So there's a couple of different, like I said, there's a couple of different solutions that we've tried to come up with. And it's disheartening when you start looking at what needed to change for that to happen. It changes so much of the game. You're literally reinventing the game.
Not only that, but if you take what has already been established and you try to change it into this new format, you're going to lose a lot of things. You go from, yes, if you have magic in a fantasy type setting, then you will have to have calls. This does this. This, I am casting this. If you try to remove these things like the calls, and you may have to explain things to other people, and we've just lost our light. So I'm going to stand up. You'll see me here in just a second while I wave my sword, and that does not do anything. Ouch. It is dark.
Hey, and we're back.
And we're back. Keldor has already returned to the Dwarven Cave. Ah, he's back. But if you start removing these calls and changing these calls, or if you want to remove them altogether, you become a non-fantasy LARP anymore. You don't have spells.
Well, you still would, though. I mean, there was a couple of different things that we were talking about, like color coding the spells. So if you got hit with one and you couldn't hear it, but you saw it coming, it gives you at least a little bit better chance to know this one damages a limb, this one takes me to mortal, this one kills me. If there was 3 spells like that, it would essentially still work. And like if I threw a root ball at you, like if I threw a green ball at you, you would know that you're rooted.
I would know that you've thrown some form of earth magic at me.
Right.
Now we're talking about shades. Light green, medium green, heavy green.
No, we tried that with poisons. That didn't work.
No, it didn't.
But essentially what we're, and again, just kind of thinking out loud.
Or you limit that to that number of spells. What does this spell do? All spells of this color kill you.
Yeah, that was the idea.
I mean,
you got 3 colors.
You have only how many spells then? No, I'm talking about let's do it a different way. We have 5 different colors for spells. Okay, black for shadow, white for arcane, red, blue, and green. You get hit by a spell ball. There are no other spells except one. One spell, it will kill you.
I don't think so. I think if you had the 3 damage spells, and then you had each of the elements with their one color doing a specific thing as a offensive. So now then you switch the other spells that they have to something more profession-like or something that helps in different ways, but is not an offensive.
Right, and then you wouldn't need a spell packet, a spell ball or a spell orb or a packet to throw at that point.
Well, you would still use it to represent the magic.
Right, but you wouldn't have to throw a support spell.
Then instead of like 24 spells being thrown, which most are, it's
5 or 6.
It's 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. You got one of each element.
That is a damaging spell that is thrown.
Or it does something. It's an effect. Like root may not damage you, but it holds you in place.
Right. So
water would do something.
So if I wanted to throw
shadow would do something.
Right. If I wanted to throw arcane death,
you would actually just throw. If you would do it in this new format, you would just have like a purple or a yellow or whatever color you did designate as death, that's the color that death is. It's no longer attached to any of the elements.
So you're taking it like arcane death. You're just removing arcane. It's like I'm throwing a death spell.
Yeah, if you see that yellow or orange or whatever color it is, you know that's a death spell flying through the air. Nobody has to call it. Nobody has to say anything. They just know that color represents what that's gonna do.
You could also do the same thing with arrowheads for one-shot kills. Yeah,
you could. Or you just make like a red cover. Anything that's flying with a red, it's a one-shot kill. So it's just now you would have to come up with other neat abilities for the magics of myths and legends to give that flavor of the fantasy stuff.
And the ability to expand and learn as well.
Right, and to keep that role play of the magic in the game.
Sports spells are, believe it or not, folks, support spells are more difficult to come up with than damaging spells.
And damaging spells are hard to come up with in the sense of a damage spell that does something different, so that they're not all the same.
Are you sure that Zufnar looks like Gandalf?
I think it's Gandalf.
Like a young Gandalf.
I think so.
I don't think you guys have ever actually seen this kit. You're looking at Sephiroth.
No, Sephiroth died before he was really done.
Right.
Just speculating and trying to figure out how to keep things in the fantasy game fantasy, but take away some of that stuff.
And I've heard most of what you guys were saying, and I've read some of what's in the scrolls. I only got about halfway through it before I had to just go offline for a little bit. Yeah, I agree with it being a fantasy system. You can't not have calls. But minimizing the number of calls is completely doable, but it's going to be a trade-off. Hey, we're going to do this one last change. We're going to get this thing as streamlined as we can. We're still going to alienate players. I mean, the first time we did a major revision was when we changed the magic right after the 4.0 release, and that cost us a lot of players. But we've also since grown. So
yeah, it didn't seem like that loss of players lasted too long because the playability went up. So we gained players that we otherwise would have lost. So how do we, I guess, explaining to the viewers and the listeners, what is the end game for this?
There is no end game. That's just it. I guess it.
What's the
define what you mean by end game.
What's the end goal for LarpCraft?
Oh, my vision of it was always, a global community united under one rule set, under one community, Yeah. 100% immersive games, top quality. I mean, I make Hollywood jealous games,
Right. See, my vision was maybe not as Hollywood, but as crafted as possible from the player standpoint, and to have a lot of people. I envisioned it to be a lot of micro and small groups that could come together on games and collaborate to create these really big games. So, I still want to see the big battles and thousands of people at a game, because in LarpCraft we haven't done that yet. And I think to do that, you need it to be more simple. Players need to be able to understand it and have a good feel for it, but be able to retain it and play it with minimal memorization.
I
Right.
just had a thought about the lot of people, you don't really know how a lot of people see color, because a lot of people are colorblind and they don't really say anything about it. So like red and green might look the same to some people, blue and orange. I believe there's that kind as well. So I don't know. Maybe we could do something with size or something. But then you'd be throwing like cantaloupes at people to guess that or something.
Yeah.
That could get dangerous once it gets bigger. Oh gosh.
Ronan is throwing on a piece of a
Former prop set.
former prop onto the fire. One of the death totems. So it might get bright here in a little bit.
Well, you did ask what is the goal? What is the end game? What is the... For me, personally, the goal of LarpCraft was to build games that people could get immersed in and basically get away from their normal lives for a weekend and have fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think
The dragons are battling.
the dragons are battling. I don't know if you can hear that on the audio, but there's fireworks going off, and they're far enough away. I don't think you can hear them. But I don't know. In most games, as long as you have the immersion, or at least you have some props, or people putting forth at least a little bit of an effort, you get that, don't you? I mean, we've gone to pretty poor games that still were a lot of fun, and we got away from it all.
Right. I mean, like, to me, that's my goal. When I go to a LARP event, I want to be Ronan. I don't want to be Will. I want to be Ronan for a week. And however people can keep me in the game like that works for me.
What about you, Keldor? What do you see as the end game?
I don't know. I really like the fact that we have a rule set where we can go to other places and play the same game, and it should be the same. I like it when that works.
Well, the base rules,
Yeah, the base rules.
yeah, should be the same.
So, like, I don't know.
Like from here, if we could go to Deep Light, or if we went all the way down to Avern Colony, or we went to Rust River, they're all the same set of rules that I don't have to relearn the basics just to play them.
Well, I'm going to Darken Vale. I'm going to England. And then I'm going to the Southern Wilds Colony. I'm going to Australia. Let's go way far.
Okay.
In Iceland. Isle of Wight Colony.
That would be cool.
That would be so cool.
You know, I don't know if you're necessarily asking the right question. I don't know if it's so much what's the end game for LarpCraft as really honestly, what do you want from a LARP? You know, for me, for instance, I want to get out, I want to role play, I want to pretend to be somebody I'm not. I don't need a whole bunch of abilities to do what it is I do, regardless of what it is, whether I'm in town playing a smithy or a tavern keep or a bandit or whatever, you know. I need a little bit of armor. I need some safety regulations to make sure that I know that whatever I'm getting hit with isn't going to break something. I need my weapons. That's really it for me. You know, anything else is unnecessary, but that's for me. I don't want just a battle system. I don't. That's why I'm not involved with other groups. Like, you know, around me, there's a lot of Bell, there's a lot of DAG, a couple of Amtgard groups. That just doesn't do it for me. I want that interactive story. And I don't need abilities to have that interactive story.
Now, when it comes to abilities, again, when we were starting this, we needed abilities to make classes and people separate and unique and however they wanted to play their character. It's not something we did to, well, you're going to play this race and this, you know, things along those lines. We wanted them to be unique, so somebody coming in says, yeah, I want to play a character like this. Okay, well, these are abilities if you want to do it this way. If you don't want to do that, you have these other abilities.
Right, but the way it's worked, it's evolved to now is everybody looks at the abilities as, you know, what can I do to make me the most powerful guy in the game so that no matter what I do, I'm going to come out on top. You know, and that's not what the spirit of the game is about.
Yeah, that's called missing the point and not following the spirit of the game.
But I think also we kind of failed to let everybody know that. We were on a good roll with instructions and the videos and the tavern talks like we're doing now, but when we started getting involved with all the other parts, we lost some of the focus, which in turn, the players lost the focus because there was nobody there leading that part.
I mean, for me, really, the class is just one more label that gets metagamed like crazy. I don't know how many times in a game, you know, I hear somebody talking about, oh, well, you're a rogue, so, you know, you must be a thief, or, you know, you're a ranger, you're a paladin, you're a do-gooder, blah, blah, blah. Some of that, yes, I can understand from a background, you know, if people who call themselves paladins are generally zealots and, you know, hand of justice, that kind of thing. I can understand that based on the definition of what a paladin is. But what kills me is when immediately, because I assume you're a paladin, I'm also going to assume you've got holy aura. I'm going to assume that you can resurrect, you can cure wounds, whatever. And you guys know me from day one. You know, I've never been a big fan of the class structure. I feel that everybody can be a special snowflake without needing that predefined label.
See, and I always saw the label as a way to build your character and your kit, more so than what abilities you have.
Right. And I can understand that. I come at it, I get a concept, I'll find like some concept art or something. You know, I know you can't really see it, but this kit minus the mask is based off of the Immortals from 300. But it's just, I really like the way that looks, so I'm like, I'm going to put that together. What class am I? I haven't even given that a consideration. What race? I'm on the fence right now on whether I want to use my base race as human or beast, because the idea is the character is a lycan. But other than that, you know, no consideration to anything else. That's not what's important. What's important for me is how I interact with the game world, how I interact with the other characters in the game world.
Right. And that can be taught.
Exactly. I don't need to label myself, oh, I'm a warrior. I'm a guy who happens, you know, take Ufnar, for example. When I created Ufnar, I set him up as a barbarian. But as I played that character, it quickly became apparent he is not a barbarian. You know, he hunts people. He's somewhere between, you know, and oh, yay.
Don't get shot, Ufnar. Okay, he turned his mic off. So
Sorry, sirens. He's a hunter, he's a killer, he's a murderer. I don't need a class for that. But, sorry, go back to what point you were going to make, sorry.
well, in this tavern talk, we're just kind of spitballing ideas of, you know, not so much what abilities, like the nitty gritty part of abilities, but how do we want the game to be set up? Because right now, it doesn't work with large numbers. But what do we have to change to make it work with both, that people are generally happy?
And that you can keep the fantasy setting.
Right. Because otherwise this would turn into
Medieval reenactment.
Right. It wouldn't be Myths and Legends.
Right.
Which, I mean, if the crowd went and said that's what we want to do, but that's not the case. Everybody likes the fantasy part that we got set up, so.
Because otherwise you go straight to just having humans and just, it's what, 1297 all over again or something? Or whatever year the medieval it was.
Right. So these are, things like this tend to plague game creators in almost every facet of role-play games. And your audience, I mean, basically that's why I asked the question, what do you think the end game of LarpCraft is? Because if we know what the common vision is for the end game, we can build a system to meet that. Whereas if you create a system before you know what you want to end up at, where you want to end up, you're never going to get there if you don't have a plan and sort of that kind of thing. So again, being able to play with the small clubs, the small colonies, and being able to grow into thousands of players if your community supports it, that's the nourishing part that I want LarpCraft to have. Wouldn't be exciting. There's some ninjas sneaking around.
Again, it's going to vary from person to person. I think we've got a really solid base with the professions. That's one of our most role-play intensive aspects of this game. I mean, yeah, there's a few tweaks that could probably be done in there. We discussed a few of those at my practice today. I love the fantasy races. I understand putting the abilities in there to make each race stand out, but at the same time, I mean, just being able to play the race without anything special separating me from you other than I look different than you. I mean, you're going to have people that are going to want to play orcs regardless of whether they've got any racial abilities at all. Just because that sounds like it's a lot of fun. You've got people that are going to want to play elves just because that sounds like fun to them.
We've been rambling on this tavern, not to cut you off, Ufnar Sephiris, but we're going to end this tavern talk. We're going to keep talking, but let us know what you think. Let us know what you think is right with the Myths and Legends system. What do you think is wrong with the Myths and Legends system? Post it below this LarpCast. Don't post it in the video chat on like YouTube or anything. Actually follow the link and go to that blog post so everybody can see what everybody else is writing.
This is the part where what you say, we read. If we get enough of the same thing, we will change things. Or we will keep it the same depending upon what you say. This is how the audience gets to influence the system.
Essentially, yeah.
So if you don't
comment, but they got to have the credentials to see both sides of the spectrum.
Right, I understand that, but if they don't comment, then we don't know.
Right. So that's it for this Tavern Talk. Thanks for joining us. We'll follow up again, and again, we're talking amongst the chiefs and the elders and the players. We want to all be on the same wavelength, and have a really decent system that we, after we keep saying it, but eventually this is not going to change much anymore. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And please comment on the blog post. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.